Welcome inside Alumni Stadium on the campus of Boston College, everybody. I'm Mike Petraglia for CLNS Media, and this is the Alumni5. The Boston College Eagles came into today thinking that maybe against a Wake Forest team that they had handled last year, this would be their second straight win and a home win in the ACC opener. It was certainly not meant to be. The Boston College Eagles, their own worst enemy here on Saturday afternoon, committing 4 turnovers, 3 interceptions, and a costly John Hilliman first-half fumble that really set the stage for Wake Forest to take off, and they were never headed behind the offensive efforts of option quarterback John Wolford. The Demon Deacons come into Boston College and lay a 34-10 pounding on the Boston College Eagles, who are now 1-1 overall, 0-1 in the ACC, with the prospects of taking on Notre Dame on this very same turf next Saturday at high noon. But before we get talking about that, what went wrong here on Saturday afternoon? That is what the Alumni5 is here to tell you about. The first point tonight, of course, were the turnovers. 3 committed by redshirt freshman Anthony Brown in his second start after leading the team to a dramatic 23-20 win on the road at Northern Illinois in week number 1. The redshirt freshman threw not 1, not 2, but 3 interceptions. One of them returned right before halftime for a killer pick 6 that put Wake Forest up 21-7 at the time. Boston College really was never able to recover after that. 2 of the interceptions by Anthony Brown today were on tip passes after the game. Both Steve Adazio and Anthony Brown said, look, these are interceptions that cannot happen. We have to move on to the next play, the next series, and eventually the next game after this loss today. But for Anthony Brown, he was talking about got to have better ball placement and got to focus more on just making the next play and not worry about the turnovers. As for Steve Adazio, he made no indication after the game, even though he did replace Anthony Brown in the third quarter with Darius Wade, the graduate student quarterback who's been here several years on the campus. He made no indication, did Steve Adazio, that he would make the switch to Darius Wade next week for Notre Dame, so expect Anthony Brown to get the start again next week against the Fighting Irish. On the day, as you might imagine, the numbers were not very pretty for the Boston College passing offense. Just 18 of 41, the 3 interceptions, and only 163 yards through the air. Now, that's not a huge surprise, but what they cannot have is what happened early in the game, and that was a fumble by John Hilliman in the first quarter that set the Demon Deacons up in a scoreless game at the Boston College 32. A couple of plays later, it was the Demon Deacons going on top. John Wolford with a perfect pass to Greg Dortch in the back of the end zone, 7-0, and the Eagles really were never able to get back in the game. They eventually fell down 14-0, as we mentioned, 21-7, and were really never able to gain any momentum. Point number 2 on the day, what happened to the running game for the Boston College Eagles? John Hilliman, we mentioned the one key fumble. He only had 8 carries for 27 yards. A.J. Dillon, he made quite an impression today, 15 carries, but only 44 yards. So the running game today was really not effective for the Boston College Eagles. One of the big reasons why I think Anthony Brown really struggled at the quarterback position. Point number 3 is another big reason Anthony Brown and Darius Wade and the running game might have had a huge problem, and that was the crushing news before the game that John Baker, the All-ACC starting center for the Eagles, gone for the year with a right knee injury. The Eagles are going to have to find ways to get that offensive line in rhythm the rest of the way without John Baker really calling the signals, calling the offensive line formations and the protections. And so that is another reason I think the BC Eagles really struggled today, coming into the game knowing that John Baker will not be available to them, not only for the near future, but for the rest of the 2017 season. Point number 4 here on the day, the turnovers, as we mentioned at the start. The 4 turnovers cannot happen if the Boston College Eagles are going to have any hopes of competing in a highly competitive ACC conference this year. It was the number 1 point, not surprisingly, that Steve Adazio mentioned after the game. He said, look, we did not come into this game thinking that we were underdogs. We thought we were going to win this game, and I think we would have won this game except for the 4 turnovers. That changed everything. Of course, there was the Hilliman fumble, but Steve Addazio obviously recognizing the significance of that turnover, the Anthony Brown interception right before halftime that changed the complexion of the game going forward. It was a 30-yard pick 6 and put the Demon Deacons up 21-7. The Eagles had just made a big defensive stop, had gotten the ball back at their own 15-yard line, and it appeared that the Eagles were going to, with 2 minutes and 5 seconds remaining before halftime, make a charge and try to at least get into field goal territory. It was not meant to be. The interception happened, and really that was all she wrote. And the number 5 point, on to Notre Dame. This is, of course, the rebirth of the Holy War. The Boston College Eagles, as massive underdogs, almost pulled off a huge upset a couple of years ago at Fenway Park. Everybody remembers that game in late November in which the Eagles were in the game the whole way until Notre Dame was able to pull out the 19-16 win. The perspective on this game is a lot different. I think that Boston College is going to come into this game thinking that they have a chance because, first of all, it's early in the season. Second of all, Notre Dame hasn't really been Notre Dame the last couple of years. They struggled a little bit last year, and they haven't found their way early on in the season. This perhaps is the time for Boston College to catch Notre Dame, but obviously they're going to have to put this game behind them in a hurry. There were going to be those out there after watching BC lose at home by 24 points to Wake Forest who think that the Eagles don't have a prayer against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish on Saturday, but obviously Steve Addazio and company don't feel that way. Everybody was saying how they are eager to get back to work. A lot of the players after the game, including Anthony Brown, including Harold Landry, who recorded his first sack of the year today, they said they would get back into the film room right away if they could, if they didn't have to heal their bodies and get the rest that's needed after a game. They would be right back at it. Steve Addazio finishing off his press conference here on Saturday afternoon after the game, saying that his players are bright-eyed, ready to get back to work and take on Notre Dame. But whether they can climb that mountain next week here at home with a huge October coming up on the ACC schedule, that is yet to be determined. We'll obviously have complete coverage on CLNS Media and CLNSradio.com. The final again here inside Alumni Stadium on Saturday. It was the Boston College Eagles losing their home opener and their ACC opener to the Wake Forest Demon Deacons by a final of 34-10. Inside Alumni Stadium, this has been the Alumni 5. I'm Mike Petraglia, CLNS Media.